operationalize that to get
Sorry.
it. It's okay.
have to do that. Is that
Oh
okay?
no, you're gonna have to bring me back live for
No, well, that's fine. My bad. Sorry.
That's okay. That's fine.
I was so excited to see you. That's why. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, so that team operationalizes everything to get that new feature onto the actual app. So I also have a small data team and strategy team, but I would be the person that all those employees under those umbrellas that I've just described, they'd come to me for anything related to the employee life cycle, which is from the point where we're attracting talent, recruiting talent, onboarding them, learning and development of employees, rewards, their compensation. I'm heavily involved in those discussions. If there's performance issues, heavily involved in the performance process, all the way through to the exit stage. So I'm involved in every single one of those parts of the employee life cycle. And that's why it's like a jack of all trades. If there's employee relations problems and someone claims someone harassed them or something, they come to HR. So I'm kind of just their central strategic partner for anything. It's very, very broad as opposed to like a specialized area of HR.
Let me ask you this, Alicia. So you have, for the longest time, HR was process driven. And it seems like a lot of it has moved back to people. You see new titles, HR business partner or people in culture. How do you see that playing out, just that move shift back towards people as opposed to processes? How do you think that's affected your role and just how you see HR?
So, I mean, I think I understand what you're saying. Like HR used to be a very administrative heavy job, and it was very, like I'm processing when you start a job, they make you sign that I-9, like this is your I-9, you're verifying you can work in the US. And it was a lot of just paperwork and that administrative stuff. HR has shifted dramatically to becoming more strategic, and you have to have a lot of business knowledge. You don't have to be an expert at finance and an expert at accounting and all those things, but HR now has more of a seat at the table for really big decisions for the business. That wasn't a thing in the past. HR was kind of like stay in your lane. You deal with the administrative stuff. Now HR has a seat at the table, and obviously the more business knowledge you have, the more you add value. So now, they come to me for counsel on really significant business decisions, and they look to me to provide, data and data-driven action plans for the team. Based off of this, I think that we need to, create a culture committee, or we need to do this. We have retention problems. Here's a strategy for how we can retain. We have a headcount problem with hiring. We need to hire X amount of data scientists, whatever. So it's a lot more strategic, which is a lot more pressure too. It's a lot more high stakes, but it's been very interesting to see that swing from admin to being much more strategic. And I think I'm still young enough in my career where I missed some of that. Like I came in as that evolution was happening. So I think I didn't get as much of obviously, because I started as a coordinator, there was a little bit more administrative things I had to do. But yeah, I don't know if I answered that question.
No, no, it's perfect. I just want to open it up. Does anybody have a question really quick? I'm more than happy. Yeah. Oh, here we go. What specifically at Activision or TikTok? Oh yeah. So what specifically did you do while you were at Activision? Can you kind of walk through your job description a little bit?
Yeah. So like I said before, I started as a recruitment coordinator. So that's really like scheduling interviews, setting up the rooms for interviews. It was a lot of administrative stuff. But then when I moved to HR/recruitment, that's when I started getting more involved in onboarding of new hires, and I would kind of revamp. Treyarch in particular was so open to like anything I wanted to do, and they just let me, I had no limitations. They let me do whatever I wanted. So I would kind of pay my own way. They had never had someone like me there before. So I, created like as simple as our inventory of new hire swag, and the system for rolling that out, to managing our internship program. So that was one of the bigger projects they let me have very early on in my career. Whereas normally a coordinator maybe doesn't have business leading an entire program like that, but they were very open to just giving me that responsibility. So that's how it started. And then there was a point where they said, you can either stay with Treyarch and focus on HR, or you can come to corporate and focus on recruiting, because I was kind of had one foot in each store for a while. And I made the decision to stay with Treyarch and pursue HR. So that's when I was promoted first to associate HR generalist. And that's when I did a lot more of the strategic HR stuff. So I started getting much more involved with the performance review process and compensation decisions. I still own the internship program, but I got involved on a much more strategic level. And it's pretty much the same type of role that I have at TikTok, but my client group was different. It was the entire studio. So that any developer for the video game was my client group. So I was doing the same level of entire HR support, but for the engineers, game designers, animators, artists and production people that produce those games.
Is that good? Yeah. So where did you typically find your best candidates? Did they apply to positions, or did you go out and seek them?
Yeah, it's very different again in both worlds. So I'm less involved because at TikTok we have an entirely separate university relations team, and they just posted roles, by the way, so check them out. But so I've been less involved with the TikTok early careers stuff because it was very separate. Whereas at Treyarch we had our own program and I managed that. So at Treyarch, we did go to a lot of schools and we would visit schools and try to do some recruiting there. Otherwise, it was just through direct applicants. And our hiring managers were very specific about what sort of criteria they were looking for. And it did really come down to demonstrating that on your resume, because especially for internships, the volume is incredibly high. And you do go through these filter systems to kind of reduce the talent pool. And so it really is important to meet like some of the basic minimum requirements and make sure that your resume is really catered, especially earlier on, to really cater your resume to the job description so that it picks up the keywords and they can very quickly see that you fulfill the basic requirements for the role. So another thing too, if you already kind of know a company you want to work for down the road, I would look at even if you're not ready to apply now, but I would look at their job descriptions now and see what stuff you can build toward and add to your resume to prepare for applying for that job, because it really does come down, unfortunately, I would say, to your resume. And I say unfortunately because I think the interview is really the best way to sell yourself and is like the most important part of an interview process. But when there's high volume like that, especially at companies as large as Activision and TikTok, it's going to really require the resume to hit the keywords and make it through the first rounds of filter.
And we'll work on that. Trust me. So I still get to do all the career coaching for the school of business. How important do you think you obviously had thought about getting your MBA right after school, maybe doing the daytime program? How important do you think for either HR or any other business discipline, an MBA or maybe an HRIS certification, maybe project management certification? Yeah. What do you think is most important?
Yeah, so I feel inclined to really promote the MBA program here, but I mean, I didn't do it. So I'm a little bit
about going back to get an advanced degree.
So I think I would if I found an employer that would reimburse it. So just financially, like for me personally, if I could afford it if I wasn't worried about incurring like debt or something like that, I would do it now. But there are employers that will reimburse. And I started going through my HR certification program at UCLA because Activision reimbursed it. So but I didn't even finish that because then I left Activision before I could finish it, and TikTok doesn't provide the same thing. So I'm a little bit biased because I feel like it has not been absolutely required for me to get to where I've gotten thus far. It's always been preferred though, especially in HR, that you have some level of HR certification. I feel like I've just flown under the radar and not had to do that. But I do think it depends on the employer. Like some employers do really value the academics, and for certain roles, I think it's much more important. Like if you want to be a CPA, like you obviously have to get certified. And there's a lot of research jobs that I've seen. That's not really business, but even at TikTok, where it heavily matters that you have a PhD or you have a certain level of education. So it just depends, I think, and that's not a very specific answer, but I've been with employers so far where for my HR career, it has not been a deal breaker, but I'm sure it gives you an edge. You know, if I'm against another candidate that's equally competent and has equal experience, but has that extra education, I would probably lose to them.
Okay. Just a couple more questions. Can you give me or give us one, or does anybody have a question? Oh, here we go. Yeah, Elizabeth.
What is your favorite part about
The favorite part about working at TikTok or the job?
the job?
Oh, yeah. So I was going to ask the work. So you jumped in. I
Actually,
love it. I love it. So let's be happy first. So what's the best part about your job?
You don't want to delay gratification and start with the negative and end positive?
No, let's go ahead and just start with good things. So what is the best part of your job?
Yeah, what really kept me in HR and prevented me from continuing my marketing pursuits was I'm a very extroverted person and I really like people and relationships. And this even helped me decide between recruiting and HR because both involve interpersonal interaction, but recruiting, it's like you have these short bursts of connection with candidates and then you either crush their dreams or you make their dreams come true and then you never talk to them again. But in HR, you build these really long-term relationships. Like over those 4 years at Treyarch, I supported 300 to 400 employees and I knew every single one of them. And I got to know my managers super, super well. And I could customize how I worked with them and partnered with them based off my relationship with them and what I knew about them. And so as someone that really likes people, I find it very rewarding to get to know everybody. And you really can add a lot of value leveraging those relationships the more you know them, the more you can be strategic and say, you know, this is how you can help this employee, or when you come to me with a problem, here's a solution to that. And so I really like when I can add value to the company and make people just like happier and have a healthier work life and a healthier life. Like you're impacting their literal lives. It's their pay, it's their happiness, you know, and you can have a lot of direct impact in that in HR.
I love that response. Love it. I try and get, because I spent 20 years in HR. And so for me, I can fully relate. One some of the best stories I ever had where people came to me and said, you just changed my life. Thank you very much. And there's always the bad part too. So give us one thing that maybe, this is not the greatest part about either working in HR or maybe working at TikTok, I don't know, or whatever.
Yeah, that's easy. With humans, there's always complexities to that. People are difficult, self-included. We're complex. And so human resources, you're dealing with humans all the time. And I would say like employee relations issues are the hardest part because that's when someone comes to you and says like, I was sexually harassed or I was discriminated against, or I think the most challenging thing that's happening, especially at TikTok, is when mental health is a part of the ER issue. So sometimes you have a situation where someone has a mental health issue and maybe they're not disclosing it. And there's all this risk, right? HR is all about risk mitigation. And it used to be taboo. Like, I don't want to hear if you have a mental health problem, don't even utter it. Don't even speculate about it because then we open ourselves to all this risk and blah, blah, blah. But now I'm grateful that it's become much more of an open discussion about mental health. And at TikTok, our safety department in particular, these content moderators look at traumatic content. You know, you don't see it, but people upload horrific things. And we have human beings that have to look at this all day long and make sure it doesn't get onto the app. So they're obviously dealing with very traumatic content, and mental health is a very open discussion, but sometimes someone's mental health can take a hit and then it results in a conduct behavior in the workplace. And so there's all these multi-layers of just sensitivities, and you have to balance between what's the risk to the company with this, what about their own personal well-being, and I empathetically really care for this employee, and trying to balance all of that, like what's the conduct issue at work, what's the risk issue with the company, and how can I help this person without crossing these lines or whatever. So it's just very delicate, and there's not a clear rule book of how to approach those. Every single case is different, and you have to approach every single case differently, and it's really easy to mishandle. So that's probably not even like worst, it's just the hardest part.
I gotta be honest with you, I didn't expect that response. And so that was super powerful though. No, I really, no, that was good, because you don't think about the people that are actually having to, you know, my 12-year-old's on TikTok. I appreciate the fact that there's somebody there at least somewhat monitoring, other than myself, which I do, but monitoring, hey, this shouldn't be on the app. And so, oh, wow, that's super disturbing. That just had an effect on me. So you don't think about that stuff. You don't think about that stuff. Last question. Best piece of advice. What's the best piece of advice? So thinking that most of my students here are freshmen and sophomores, best piece of advice you could give them just while they're here at Point Loma, or even initially past Point Loma? What do you think that might be?
Yeah, well, kind of what you maybe noticed through me just sharing my story is how much networking played a significant role. I think the best thing you can do, other than like what we've addressed, right? Meeting minimum qualifications, but really owning your career path. Like it required a lot of tenacity from me, and like selling myself, finding informational interviews, people that would give me those interviews, making connections on LinkedIn, going to the networking events. So I think networking is the biggest thing you can do, because even if you don't meet the basic qualifications on a resume, if you know somebody on the inside, they can usually help you out. The way I was flagged for Red Bull, I mean, all I had, granted, I didn't get that job, but I was going against people, no hate to Point Loma, but I was going against people that had Harvard degrees and Stanford degrees. And I don't think I would have made it if I didn't get it flagged by someone internally. So I think that's one of the most important things to help you with your career is leveraging the people you know and building your network, because not only can that help you, but then eventually you can turn around and help other people. And that's part of why I wanted to come here, is I want to be connected with all of you. And I want people, especially from Point Loma, to have better opportunity to get into some of the bigger companies that maybe don't know Point Loma. Point Loma really sets you up for success in San Diego. And again, I'm not trying to say anything negative. I've said this straight to Dan Bothy before, but it's not as well known, obviously, as like Stanford or Harvard. And I really just think that networking and leveraging your connections is a really great way to do that. And there's an art to that too. Like I said, you don't want to just cold call people. And if you're not basically qualified, don't ask someone to refer you, because that puts them in an awkward situation too. But even if you're not qualified, you could still leverage those connections to find out more, like find out what I need to do to make it in that company. Do I even like that company? Before you even apply, you know this person and you can ask them what it's like, and just there's a lot of benefits to networking and having connections. So I think that's what I would say.
And I will say, speaking of networking, so Carissa was here to Callaway. She was offered a job at Callaway, Bay Area, finance student, amazing. I've known her for 4 years. She was in my intro class. She's going to connect with you. She's amazing finance student. Callaway offered her a job just like that. Callaway's a great company, and they don't hire non-talented people. So anyway, she's going to reach out. Want to make sure it's okay if some of the students, if they're interested in speaking with you further and building their network, it's okay if they connect with you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, please just like add a note to let me know you're like,
Yes.
I'll probably be able to see you're from Point Loma, but maybe just add a note that you're from this class so I don't reject you.
You wouldn't do that. I can't tell you how we haven't just talked in a long time, and so I appreciate you so much. This will not be, I'm going to abuse our relationship now and have you come speak as much as I can. So I appreciate it at least so much. So good. And I'm so happy for you. Congratulations on all the stuff that you've done. Enjoy West LA. It's amazing. I love Venice. So
yes,
super cool. Yeah, it's super cool. So anyway, I'll have them connect with you. Thank you again. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Give it up for- And